Welcome to our training for how to become a top podcast guest. You are in the right marketplace at the right time. Being a podcast guest is exploding. It is the number one way to become the number one authority in your niche, to become famous in your world, to become a micro celebrity. And truly, being interviewed on 2 podcasts every single week puts you in front of 100 audiences every single year. I'm going to take you through just the introduction to what you can expect in this Top Podcast Guest training course. We have an incredible workbook put together for you. And we have 8 modules that we're going to walk you through. So I want to make sure that you download the workbook that we have put together for you, take notes, and come back and take each module very seriously. We put a lot of background, a lot of history, a lot of experience into this training. We are not new to podcasting. In fact, I started my very first podcast in 2008. Pretty much when anybody with a cell phone and an internet connection started podcasting. And I started my first podcast in somebody's basement. They had a full production studio, and I would go in every single week and have my show professionally produced. Now, these days with technology, with the equipment, you don't have to go into somebody else's studio. You can pretty much build your own podcast studio from home. And what's even better about being a podcast guest is from anywhere. You've got a great video camera, a great microphone, a great internet connection, great audio. Right? You can be a podcast guest pretty much from anywhere around the world, impacting people on all time zones globally. And your podcasts end up evergreen, right? They are long lasting. So often as a speaker or if you're in front of an audience or even a sales call or a networking event, you get to impact that audience for that moment, right? A couple hours, a couple days. But as a podcast guest, your story has lasting impact. Somebody could listen to that podcast days, weeks, months from now, even years from now. And your impact and your story has a foundation that's going to last long lasting, long beyond the podcast interview. I say that getting discovered is the most fun way to grow your business. And every day people are listening to podcasts. They are listening to the podcast while they're actively doing something else. They're walking a pet, right? Outside walking their dog. Maybe they're working out, they're cleaning the house, they're commuting. They're actively doing something else, which means their brain is hyper engaged to be listening to you and listening to your story. So being a podcast guest is the number one way to connect more deeply with your audience, to attract more traffic into your sales funnel, or your sales castle, as I like to call it, to create lasting impact and to truly monetize your brand. Most entrepreneurs are struggling to find leads, but as a podcast guest, being interviewed on 2 podcasts every single week means you're in front of 100 new audiences with a nonstop funnel of unlimited leads coming into your sales funnel. So I want you to become obsessed with being a podcast guest, with doing media interviews. And remember that results don't take courage or take time. They take courage. So let's step up. Here's what you can expect from this program is several modules that we have put together for you. We're going to work on getting clarity on your message, on your topics, and your shows. And what's really great about this, the idea of guesting, is you get to focus on your signature topic, the thing that you're most passionate about, the thing that you love to speak about, right? If I handed you a microphone and asked you in 20 minutes, right? If I wanted you to speak right now, if I handed you a microphone and gave you 20 minutes without preparation, what could you passionately speak on? And you could probably start to make a list of those things that you love to talk about, you love to have, that you have expertise, experience, wisdom, stories that you can share. So we're going to get clarity on your message, your topics, and your shows, and which shows make the best sense, right, for you to pitch on. We're going to go over optimizing your pitch. Right? Being a guest, probably, right, as podcasters have very limited shows. They might be only doing one a week. one a day, right? That no matter what it is, it's limited. When I was a talk show host in broadcasting, I had a daily talk show, but even that daily talk show was limited on how many guests we interviewed and how many guests we brought into the studio. So we want to optimize your pitch for the biggest bang, right? The instant hit. We're going to take you through our strategy and our method for how you can grab the podcaster's attention and set it up for success for the audience. We're going to talk about answering interview questions. Podcasting is a dialogue, right? It's a conversation between you and that podcast host. And so we want to talk about how to answer interview questions, how to redirect if it kind of goes down a path you don't want it to go, and some do's and don'ts just to how to optimize your experience in the podcast studio. We're going to show you also how to promote the show so you get more bookings, right? Stages attract stages, podcasts attract podcasts. And so we want to show you how to attract and set it up to promote the show so that you get booked, right? You get invited to speak. So really that's the goal, right? In the beginning, we're going to go out and we're going to pitch. We're going to find some podcasts for you to be on regularly, right? We're going to consistently put you out there, but it's going to turn into a place, right, where we've created the consistency and the momentum where now you're being an invited guest. People will be reaching out to you to be a guest on their show. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how to monetize your leads, right? As you're building traffic and using podcast guesting to build traffic, to build your leads, we want to make sure that you're monetizing it on the back end. And so being a podcast guest can be a real strategic method, right, in your system, in your marketing system, in your sales and lead generation system. And we're going to show you how to do that. Tracking your media exposure. You want to know, right? How often are you being seen? Where is it going? What kind of impact, what kind of reach your media exposure is getting? We'll teach you how to do that. And then, of course, attracting even more shows, reusing your content, all the systems of being a podcast guest. But the most fun, right? The most fun piece of it all is really getting discovered using podcast interviews. So here's a couple of media tips, right? Turn off your sales pitch, right? Being a podcast guest isn't about selling. It's about sharing. It's about adding value, adding an educational tip or an entertainment value to the podcast. We're going to show you how to leverage other people's audiences to grow your following, monetize, and making sure that you have your closing statement prepared. So these are just some of the things we're going to go through during this training. We're going to talk about your topic, your media pitch, positioning yourself as that media magnet to get invited back to more stages, having a really great call to action so that we can monetize and use podcast guesting to build your email list and growing your database. Getting you booked on 2 interviews a week to get in that cadence of 2 interviews a week, just getting really comfortable and consistent with getting booked every single week, right? Being interviewed is the fastest way to build trust, elevate your credibility, and lead ideal clients into your sales castle. Going to help you build out your Media One sheet, which is really a cheat sheet for your podcast host, right? On helping them to set you up for success, not to have a robotic podcast. Like every podcast, even if you use the same introduction and the same set of questions, it's going to be different because of the vibe of the podcast. We have some samples of media sheets that we're going to set you up with. Again, going over our 5 different ways to answer media questions, giving you some do's and don'ts for your media interviews, creating your tracking, setting up your formula, joining our podcast directory or how to leverage our podcast directory, and then tracking your 100 stages for the year. So this is going to be an incredible journey that we are going to take together. And I am super excited to be training you on this. I have 10 years experience in broadcasting as a podcast host, as a TV show host. We run the best online group for finding guests and getting booked. We run one of the greatest marketplaces for podcasters and guests to find each other. And so we're super excited to offer you this top podcast training. So buckle up. We're in for a great journey together. I can't wait to see you as a rising star, a celebrity in your space, attracting more leads, becoming the number one authority, and optimizing it all the way through. So cheers.